All right, guys, we're officially live on the Plan for the Worst live chat. Quick introduction. Ryan and Brianne from Shooter Media Outlet. We got Scott from Sterner Firearms and down there. Mikey, who are you associated with? Anybody?
No, I'm freelance in every possible sense of the word.
Fair enough. Basically, we decided to have this chat just because of
September is National Preparedness Month. So this is our Be Prepared chat.
Kind of our take on it, just some ideas that we've got for preparedness, I guess, kind of bugging in, bugging out our thoughts. Some of our plans, recently we had a storm blow through, some of us lost power. We came very close to losing a lot.
Yeah.
You know, 2 of the pine trees out back fell. So there's a lot to just take from that small scenario. So the 4 of us kind of just are getting together, kind of hashing out some of the plans and ideas that we have. So Mikey and I have been talking for probably 15 minutes or so before Scott got on, before we started this. And we had a pretty good conversation starting out about go bags. Do you want to pick up kind of where we left off or kind of give us an intro on where we're being with
that? Well, as far as like go bags and things like that, I don't have a specific, say, pre-made go bag to recommend, but there are a couple of things like that you should just have around the house, either around the house, in your vehicle, or even in your backpack. Most of these items I have in my backpack all the time, for not only just for emergencies, but just plain handy. Like kind of first and foremost is just having a flashlight with you. While I was actually down at the beach, my sister-in-law came back to the house because she's staying with us, and the power is out. The power's out for probably about 3 or 4 hours on my block. And the kind of first thing that was useful to her, I was able to tell her exactly where a flashlight was, like in the kitchen. So she was able to get that, be able to check around. And moving on to the second thing real quick, before we get into like, I don't know, what you have in your go bag, is most emergencies you aren't going to have to bug out for. Most of them are sit tight and stay protected in your homes. And one of the most important things is just to make sure basic things in your home, the people who live in it know how to do. The first of which is check your... That was my wife, Katie. Say hi, Katie, to the internet. Is know how to operate your breakers and your electrical system. Because if it is a short or something like that, being able to check to see if it is based in your house, or if like the whole block or something is out, you need to let everyone needs to be able to know how to do that. And so I had to run someone through on the phone how to check our breaker system.
That's a really good, I don't want to cut you off, but something else too with that would be your water shut off for your water main, stuff like that. If you would have a tree, anything come in and you bust a pipe off, it would be good to know before the problem gets really out of hand. You know, I work in construction, so I run into a lot of consumers and I'm like, hey, where's your water shut off? I'm running a Sawzall in your wall. Nobody knows where the water shut off is. I'm like, good Lord, if something breaks,
yeah,
you know, it could be really bad by the time you get a plumber out there to even identify, you know, where.
Yeah, that was good. That was going to be number 2. It was going to be electric, and then it was going to be plumbing.
Yeah, utilities for sure.
Most people don't have to worry about, say, like shutting off gas. Like, obviously, it's good to know where your gas control is, but for the most part, you're not going to have to worry. Like, you're not going to have to worry about shutting off your gas to your heaters or other stuff like that. It's mostly going to be your power and water that are going to be your primary things you need to just at least be aware of.
Yeah.
For as far as utility, and then there's just a couple of basic things that everyone in your house should know how to do. It may seem simple, but know how to boil water. Like if your water's bad or your water's brown, or someone lets you know like, hey, a sewer line bust. You should be able to know how to boil water and make it safe for drinking. But yeah, just on general things, everyone in your house should know how to basically batten down the hatches, and everyone should at least be taught and shown. That came to me naturally, but a lot of people I know, like, oh yeah, no, I've never had to deal with the breakers. My husband or my like someone else has always taken care of that. So
I guess kind of since we're still on that topic, Scott, first aid, stuff like that, like basic first aid, CPR. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I want to backtrack real quick and pose this question to everyone here. Why do you think it has become that issue where people just don't know how to do this in general? Because it's funny, like we had that storm, and 2 days prior, we lost all power in our firearm store and all the stores down around our section. And the girl came over and she's like, I don't know what happened. Like, we can't get any of our lights back on. I'm like, check the breaker system. And she's like, I don't know how to do that. And it's like, okay, well, do you know where it is? Like, you're the one that like rearranged this entire building. Like, you know where it is. And she didn't know where that was. So like, you know, I'm tracking all this stuff down. But it just kind of blew my mind that, you know, how far we've fallen from where people just don't know this stuff in general. Why do you think that is?
Ooh, buddy.
I don't think they were ever taught. Like it just more back in the day, there was a parent that stayed home, there was a parent that went to work. So there was somebody there teaching the children. And then, you know, women were going out in the workforce. So it was more children fending for themselves and not learning the basics. I think that has a lot to do with it.
yeah, to be honest, I don't necessarily think it's how far we've fallen. I just think it is how, because there are different people, like my grandmother, who grew up through all of the generations that we're talking about, like the greatest generation, the boomers, everything like that. And there were still things she had to learn from scratch after my grandfather died. Like, it's just, there are some people who they're like, this person's always taking care of it for me. It's not that they're lazy or they're entitled or something like that. It's just that person always took care of those things. And so there was never a need for it. Another thing is kind of, people have shifted from a lot of, say, house ownership and like, okay, I take care of the bills, I take care of the maintenance, I take care of all that. So it's on me to know where my breaker is, to know how to change a fuse, to know how to change a breaker, all that stuff. A lot of people have rented their whole lives or like are renting still. And so it's not that necessarily that they're like, oh, I'm just ignorant and I don't know how to do, but they aren't in a situation where they have to know how to take care of all that stuff. And most of us here just grew up in a house that was like, no, hey, here's the breaker in case the power goes off. Okay, all right, thanks, Dad. And it was just assumed that you knew how to take care of it. And I actually got several calls from my dad, like, hey, can you go down and flip this breaker? And I'm like, yes, Dad, I can do that. But I do think that people just feel more these days that there's someone specific who's supposed to take care of these things, and not everyone just knows how to do these basic things. And yeah.
So it's more of a culmination of just like, you know, a bunch of different walks of life. With that being said, because this is now like, you know, we all have our smartphones, and kids are like 9 years old, they have iPhones or whatever. I think that information should be readily available. It turns into some of it being laziness for a lot of that younger group, but for people, you know, like you said, that we've grown up around, you know, second nature, and people that have relied upon that for, you know, older age. It's just interesting to see the dynamic and how that all corresponds to something based upon natural disasters or just, you know, regular things in general. But to get back to your question more so about, you know, like first aid and everything, it's an interesting topic because I was never really thinking a lot about go bags. It was more so about, you know, what I'd carry to the range with me, you know, working at EMP or doing the police interning stuff. Like, you know, what should I have for each of those individual situations where, you know, shit hits the fan, like what do we have available? But then it started turning into, you know, with all the hurricanes happening and, you know, crazy stuff happening in the news, I started having customers actually walk into my store and say, "Do you have go bags?" And that's where it just kind of dawned on me, like, holy crap, like I've always prepared myself for, like, if I get shot in the range or somebody else gets shot in the range or whatever it might be. But never took it a step further. So we really started getting into, like, looking at prepper stuff. And I don't consider myself a prepper, to be honest, but I really started getting into it and trying to find out what's necessary. And across the board, no matter what you're looking for, it's always first aid. It's how do you stop a bleed? How do you control it? How do you control that? Do you have aspirin laying around for the headache? Do you have extra water on hand if you're dehydrated? Do you have a thermal blanket? And that all kind of falls in the realm of first aid, treating hypothermia, treating shock, whatever it might be. So that's what we've found the most, coming in the firearm store. People are like really honing in on first aid and safety for their cars, for their children, for the range. And then the rest of it just kind of falls into place then. And obviously we can dig into that further. But that's what we've found in the past few months where people are really starting to look into it.
That's awesome.
Another touch on that is, do you think people should be trained in first aid and CPR? Like, should everybody go take a class?
Absolutely. I mean, they're all readily available. You can go right on to, American Red Cross and look up, $15 courses there, little courses there. I mean, a lot of jobs are being very proactive now. I've worked with mentally handicapped adults, and it was mandatory, every 6 months re-upping on AED, first aid, CPR. There's just too many people that don't even have that. I mean, in one of my go bags, I have a barrier, barrier for the CPR. It's something that's commonly overlooked, but doing EMT work, it made my job so much easier when I'd arrive to a car accident or whatever it might be. People are already applying first aid themselves. They're already, patching themselves up, controlling bleeds, applying tourniquets. That makes things so much easier. And people don't realize that bleeding out, it happens so fast. Having that tourniquet, and I don't care what tourniquet it is, it can be as simple as an Israeli bandage, it can be a soft tee, it can be a cat tourniquet, a RAS tourniquet. Having just something in your glove compartment or on your go bag or on your person, I mean, make Molly gear for everything these days. Why not have something to have a bleed? I'm a firm believer with two firearms. If you're going to use a gun for self-defense, the wound as well. It's people are like, well, it's a kind of a gray area with that, but I believe if I'm going to shoot somebody, I want to provide first aid, and it should be the same thing on the range. It should be synonymous across the board with that. Having hemostatic dressings, having suture kits, having gauze, having whatever you need to sterilize. But I 100% think that people should be more proactive and take, for $15, save a life. That's what it boils down to.
Right. And I guess that kind of brings us back to the go bags and stuff like that. Like, it kind of comes full circle. Like, how do you transport? How do you keep all that stuff with you? Just like Mikey was saying about having a flashlight. So now we're getting into the realm of, okay, this is all making sense. Like, designing a go bag, a 24-hour, 48-hour, go bag, if you will. I mean, like,
Even an everyday carry bag.
Yeah, Scott and I and Brianna have more of an EDC bag, essentially, with basic first aid and stuff like that. Not necessarily.
Mikey.
And Mikey, that guy.
Yeah. Well, what I kind of ran into is people thinking like, okay, like where do I keep this? Where's the best place to keep it? And to be honest, I've come to the conclusion that if you're only going to have like one go bag, one preparedness thing, have it in the trunk of your car. Having a first aid kit in the trunk of your car, having the simplest thing for people like having fresh water, go buy a $3 case of water from Aldi's. Keep it in the back of your car. Like, yes, it's great to have water purification, water pumps, like pot to boil, all that stuff like that. But if it's in your car and you're not like trying to hoof over a mountain range, just have a case of water. Have it in the back of your car. Have a first aid kit, a flashlight, a case of water, and I don't know, some kind of snacks or some kind of food, something like that. That will get you through, I'd say, 90% of problems that you would run into. Like, and having it in your car, most of the time your car is going to be at your house. If you're at your house, your car is at your house. So there's not really a big reason to have that much more stuff at home unless you're doing like full preparedness. Like, all right, here's a week's worth of food. Here's like 6 cases of water. Here's a generator, all that stuff, which is fine. But from a practical standpoint, I'd say the best place to have your basic preparedness kit is in your car.
No, I agree with that. Like my basic kit goes with me from house to vehicle every day. So I don't have any. Well, that's a lie. I do keep, like I said, in construction we always have about a case of water on the truck with us. So it's kind of, I guess that kind of falls into your guidelines, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that the water's pretty clutch. I was actually just talking with Floody about this yesterday when we were out for wings. He's like, it astonishes me how many officers won't carry extra water along in their bags or duty bags, whatever it might be. It's like, you don't know if you're going to run into a car accident. You're going to be out there directing traffic for 4 hours in 90-degree weather with, body armor on, all that other stuff. If you're dehydrated, victims are dehydrated too. Like, why wouldn't you have that as a norm? I mean, you can go a long time without food and still be relatively okay, but water, it goes so fast, it's the end all be all. So to add on to that with the water bottles in general, I picked up 2 life straws. So I have one for me, one for my wife. The one actually mounts right into a water bottle. It's pretty clutch. I mean, you might not find an open water source. He was talking about having brown water, bad water. You're always going to have water at that point. So I think that's pretty crucial to have something like that, or go on Amazon and find $3 water tablets. This can distill the water pretty quick, or have something to boil it or burn it off. But in general, it's just when we talk about go bags, there's such a large realm of what we can do with that I think it's daunting to a lot of people, because you can go from everything to like a little miniature bag like this to just a full size, like all out mil-spec monkey backpack, suited for 12 people. And I think that can be overkill.
Yeah.
If you have loved ones, you have family members, children, plan accordingly for 3 days. FEMA thinks it should be 3 days, but that can also be a caveat too. I mean, I think that stocking the extra water, stocking some extra food is really beneficial, because look at what happened to Texas. We're what, a week away, we're at least a week into them being hit by the worst hurricane ever. Some of the people still aren't back in their homes. Some don't have power still. Some don't have a source of food. So how do you plan for that? You have to exponentially go off of how many family members you really do have, and see what the bare essentials are. Having the light source, having the water, having some rations or food. If you want to get really crazy with it, start looking into canning. You can get a basic canner on Amazon or Craigslist or eBay for $25. Get a bunch of mason jars, can some tomatoes. Prepare yourself throughout the year. This isn't just a one-stop shop where you can be preparing yourself and say, tonight I'm going to make a go bag. You're actually preparing throughout the entire year for a natural disaster, or if something goes crazy, if there's a revolution, whatever it might be. Be prepared in increments, so you're not overwhelming yourself. You can slowly add things up, but just don't go crazy. Don't buy a trench shovel right out the gate. Don't just buy it astounds me, like looking at some of these preppers, like they'll stock you for the next 2 years, and then there's some that talk about for surviving for 2 hours out of your car if your car breaks down in the snowstorm. You have to find a very dependent line and follow it practically.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, you have to think about, like, obviously there are some things that say could strike anywhere at any time. Say a revolution, something like that. That is the extreme worst case scenario on one end, and yeah, like it would be good to be prepared for that. To start with, you should be prepared for the things that can and do happen in your area. So say like Eastern Seaboard, power outages, severe storms, especially here in late August, September. Like Lancaster had a whole bunch of trees down, power outages, stuff like that. And that's just basically the minor emergency inconveniences. That basically happens every year and can happen every year. And so there are things like that that you should always be prepared for based on on your region. Say you were further out west, you would put a much bigger emphasis on water sources and stuff like that, because you're out in the desert, you're Arizona, other stuff like that. You're not dealing with the storms and other natural things like that. But say you're broken down on that highway that's 50 miles from anywhere. Those types of things, you have to kind of intelligently look at what are the more common emergencies that are possible in my area or my situation, and plan for those first, then work yourself to all right, I need 6 AR-15s, 5,000 rounds of ammo, and other stuff like that. Just those are the things that you worry about later. Start with the basic.
AR-15s,
Correct. But I'm just saying that you think of all the emergencies that do happen and prepare for those the worst. Like, so first aid kit. Someone's, even if it's not an emergency, someone cutting themselves with a box cutter. Like, that can be a serious injury that needs taken care of. So, car accident, like you were talking about with EMT. Those are things that happen all the time, and being able to assist in that can and does mean the difference between life and death for some people. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, you know, being prepared for like your geographic location, because I've watched some of these YouTube videos with preppers that are out in, you know, Arizona, you know, right in Mesa, and they're saying, hey, like, make sure you have like 30 thermal blankets. You're probably not going to need that right off the bat. Obviously, it can get cold out there in the desert too, but, you know, they emphasize so much on staying warm, but that can be a huge thing for, you know, people on the East Coast. I mean, we get some pretty brutal winters here in Lancaster, PA. But, you know, I'm not going to be stocking, you know, rattlesnake, you know, bite kits. I'd rather be stocking the thermal blankets, going to the military surplus store and getting one of those big, heavy wool ones. Or even like, you know, a trench shovel to get the cars out of the snow. I mean, we see people broken down on the side of the road all the time. But you might not see that in Nevada. You might not see that in California. Be prepared for where you're at and what can strike on a daily basis.
like, yeah, you don't need a pound of malaria tablets necessarily in Lancaster. I mean, it's cool, but you don't need to worry about that as much.
Absolutely.
Practical prepping. Another thing is kind of off topic. Brianne brought up kind of what we were brainstorming before the chat. She had said about one of the greatest preps is your mind. Books.
Learning.
Knowledge is free for the most part. You know, so I think that's one of the most important preps is just learning. You never stop learning. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm obviously not knocking any YouTubers out there, because when I'm in my free time, it's reading books or being on YouTube and just finding out what other people are thinking about other things. I mean, obviously, doing certain things with that, but there's a lot of people that have schooled me on a lot of knowledge that I wouldn't have thought of. So it's, you know, being able to stock yourself with all that knowledge is probably one of the most key survival elements. And like I said, you know, having our smartphones, having our laptops, whatever, it's all readily available for you. It's not, you have to like go, you know, a long distance to seek this type of information. So I think that's a really crucial thing too. Things that we also brought up with some of the go bags was accoutrement. I'm a firm believer that survival is a very big mental, you know, it's a mental game as it is physical. And if you start losing morale, you start, you know, feeling kind of crappy about things, the survival rate is like, so we started talking about some of these bags that we were doing and some that we've seen that are already out of stores. We have some instant coffee. We have, you know, a little thing of toothpaste, a toothbrush, and some mouthwash, and some you know, shampoo, just a little accoutrements that will cost you 25, 50 cents at the right place. And, you know, have a little bit of a comfort at home while you don't have to be out for a while.
Right, just the morale booster of having that kind of stuff. No, I think it's a great idea. You and I talked about, you know, the go bags for a little bit in at the shop.
Yeah. And I mean, there's plenty of ideas out there. It's like, you know, we talked about having some larger size backpacks, smaller ones. But truth be told, I mean, I have like literally a miniature go bag for everything that I need, whether it's being at the store, going back and forth with the wife, or having stuff specifically for the range. And then having stuff specifically for, you know, medical emergencies. I mean, we kind of dabble in all sorts of things, but, you know, I don't know what the end all be all is and what, you know, is like EDC or the definitive, you know, go bag. But I think it falls back to what Mike was saying, where it has to be, you know, based upon where you're at, what your situation is. You know, obviously, I mean, Ryan, you're in construction, you do a lot of contracting work, so I'm sure you're going to have some stuff in your go bag that's a little bit more pertinent than what I'm going to be carrying to the gun store. It's everyone's preference and own personal lifestyles that tie into it.
I mean, something that's just worth looking at is like from the National Preparedness Month like website, like they kind of have the weekly themes, and the first and foremost is they have is make a plan for yourself, family, and friends. And that's, to be honest, that's something that I kind of have like a notion of what I do. Like, okay, I make sure that me and my locality is taken care of, everything's fine. But the plan also has to do with, okay, if we're not together and something happens, where do we meet up? Like, to be honest, I don't have that. I mean, I feel that I would just go home because I'm like, that's where all my stuff is. But that might not actually be the best thing. It might be going down to my parents' place, which is a little bit more self-sufficient, like with well water, separate gas from a system being that might be a better place to go. Also, who needs who needs to be taken care of? My first thought would be my grandmother. She's like 94. But then I'm like, okay, she's over at Willow Valley, who actually has self-sufficient power, self-sufficient water, all sorts of things like that. So she's probably fine. But is there other people that either like Ryan and Brian were talking about before we started with local neighbors who are either disabled or not as capable as you or I? Are there different things that could be a problem? Say, it may not be as much of an issue for most people, but a lot of people have different animals and stuff to worry about. Like, I have my chickens and my landlord, the cat. He has to be taken care of, or at least provided for. Like, I don't know if I would necessarily bring him with me if I was leaving, but I would, make sure he was fed abundantly before I left, and other things like that. But
dinner is hot, and if you wait,
my wife's talking about me being fed abundantly, so I'll have to wrap this up shortly. But just starting, with their first point, I was like, having a plan. That is people having some semblance of an idea of what to do or where to go to start is one of the best things. Like, if okay, there's something's happening, we should all meet at X place. And from there, people can remind each other of the things that they've forgotten. Like, oh yeah, like, all right, we got the bags, or all right, we do need to get together food. Make sure we put some extra water in some containers, something like that. And it all hinges on basically who you feel needs to interact and be responsible for each other. I mean, we're all responsible for everyone, but there's realistically different people that you need to know that you have to take care of.
Right. I agree 100% with that. Like you and I were talking about, just even writing down a list with contact numbers, as long as the phones are still working, just being able to contact spouses of our neighbors, because we do have a disabled neighbor, an elderly neighbor who's a widow. Correct. So I mean, we've got a good bit of, I don't want to say responsibility, but we are the youngest people in the neighborhood, so to be taking care of a lot of the neighbors.
At least checking in with them.
Right. Yeah. Making sure everyone and everything's okay. Right.
And I think that's something that's been, instilled in us since we've been in, grade school and early on, where there's tornado drills. There's, what happens if a stranger walks into the building? Like, people, start saying, all right, we're going to come to these plants where you have to meet at this location. You have to have, this ready. And I agree with what the website says. I mean, it doesn't have to be a daunting task for anybody. It can be, if you're with, your two kids and your wife and, and husband, you can say, all right, well, remember, hey, Jamie needs her inhaler for her asthma. Like, you're in charge of remembering this inhaler. You two kids are in charge of meeting us out by this tree if this happens. Because, when adrenaline starts pumping and things happen, like emergencies, a lot of stuff gets left out, and people forget a lot of things that's crucial, like the medicine. People remember what your blood type is. That's another huge thing.
Yeah.
It's a big thing for officers, military, EMT. Having that little card on you, or having it stored into your smartphone, or just having a bracelet that says, what your blood type is, that's a huge thing that can save a life as well. So making sure that everyone knows their role, knows their part, and just is not over encumbered. So one person has one thing to remember. Because, I mean, what happens if, we were talking about this with my wife, and we were starting to get flooded into our area. It's like, holy crap, we have all these cats. What do we do? We need to make sure we already have a clear cut plan to make sure that our pets get out safe, making sure that our elderly neighbors get out safe. We check on her during the winter time if it's a blizzard, gives her milk and eggs and stuff. It's just part of being a community. The biggest thing about preparing is coming together as a whole. And I'm
Right.
lucky to have a decent homeowners association where they have monthly meetings. They like, hey, look, so-and-so just had a stroke over the past 2 weeks. We need to make sure that they're going to be okay. So you check on them this month, check on them, and just keep going from there.
Mikey, you got to get going.
It seems like it. We got dinner nice and hot, and but I just want to thank you guys for having me on, and I'd be more than willing to interact with you guys in the future on different topics or other stuff like that, and help you get this all squared away if you wanted help.
Definitely. We enjoyed your input.
All right. Thank you all, and have a good night.
All right. Thanks, Mikey. We'll see you. But anyways, where were we, Scott?
Just talking about having a general plan. I mean, I think that's crucial. If you're dealing with these hurricanes or floods or snowstorms, people can get lost. I mean, it happens. And then your kid might get scared and dart off somewhere down the street. And it's like, make sure you have that location. Make sure that you know what's going on and who's in charge of what, medicines, taking care of the pets. Because I mean, it was heartbreaking to see that stuff happen during Texas, where people are leaving their pets by the thousands. I think if you had a regular plan and said, okay, well, we bought a carrier last year. It's going to fit our dog and our cat or whatever it is. Hey, wife, go do this. Husband, go do this, and grab the pets and meet here. I think a lot more pets would have been afraid of that. Have a can of cat food somewhere. It's just, that was really crappy to see that happen. And all it takes is literally 15 minutes to sit down with your family and say, this is what needs to happen to make sure everyone gets out alive. There's a very small price to pay instead of texting on your phone for that long or watching a TV show. 15 minutes to prepare yourself, long guys. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
No, I totally agree. It sucks to see. I mean, a lot of people had plenty of time to plan for evacuation. I mean, they knew it was coming, and I mean, I don't want to focus too much on the hurricane that happens in Texas, but at the same time, it's like Brianne and I knew something like that was approaching in our area. What's your evacuation plan? I mean, obviously, my vehicle, I'm not going to be able to transport everything. So kind of changing the topic a little bit to like evacuation. Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot vested, and I mean, kind of see the wall behind us. So, we need a U-Haul truck, something like that. But I can tell you this, the 3 cats aren't getting left behind.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing,
That's happening.
They might leave you behind, though.
All right.
No, I said if he's leaving the cats, I'm staying too.
Well, and unfortunately, I mean, that's a big thing, too. I mean, there's people that either don't want to leave their homes or can't leave their homes for whatever reason it might be. I mean, you might have a child that's, sick, stricken with some type of illness that it's like, he's not going to make it if we're traveling all over the place and might be without, shelter for a week or 2 weeks. So you might want to batten down the hatch and try and weather the storm or try and stay alive. I mean, obviously, with our technology, satellite imagery is getting a lot better. People are able to predict these tropical storms and everything happening a lot faster than they used to. So, I mean, you have time to prepare for that. But if you're forced, like, I mean, let's say you're trying to, close up the shutters and a piece of glass ends up cutting you and you're not able to move. You have to be prepared for every element, whether you're stuck somewhere, whether you have to be on the go, or whatever it might be. Actually, it was pretty funny. Well, it's not funny, but I mean, I had an interesting conversation with my mom. We were talking about the go bags and what we want to start stocking in our store here. And she was like really against the go bags. And I was like, I don't understand why. And then she called me when everything was happening in Texas. They were down there as well, and she's like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was seeing everyone on the news and these Texans with their go bags and everyone trudging along and helping each other out. And she's like, I didn't really think about it. I always thought of like a go bag was like for the apocalypse or the end all be all, not just staying alive or being able to make it through a couple of days of some bad weather. So it was interesting to see her, mentality change on that and why it was necessary. It's not like we're saying you have to have, crazy this, crazy that, but something as simple as, a hand crank radio and a flashlight is huge. I mean, Bloody and I think you guys are gonna be doing it too. We're gonna get into the ham radio here. I actually just ordered mine this morning, but I want to be able to do that. And that's a big thing that I think a lot of people have missed on is ham radios. When you look at Hurricane Katrina, when you look at 9/11, for example, all communication went down. It was just overwhelming inundation of people trying to call their loved ones or trying call into the police or firefighters. Power grids went down. Communication went down. But the people that got everything up and running, and the first rescues to happen, and the first getting the boots on the ground were ham radio operators. It's what, $10 or $15 for the entire course to become a technician or be able and legal to run a ham radio. And we found a really nice ham radio on Amazon for $28.95. You guys are close enough to us. If things get crazy, hey, call sign whatever. Like, I need your generator. I need
exactly.
So that's
I think we're definitely going to incorporate our families into kind of a preparedness plan, depending on how severe the incident is. That's another point to even talk about is find like-minded people in your area that you can incorporate into your plan. You know what I mean? And make sure that they've got. I'm not saying pick them out because they've got skills. Just vet them, make sure that they're decent people. I mean, if something would happen, I totally trust Scott. In any type of situation. So, I think that's definitely important.
But having that network and everything that you need to, I mean, we all have different skills, different trade sets. You have your bees with honey. We have our tomatoes and jalapenos, like all this canning stuff that we're starting to do. So it almost becomes a bartering system, but it becomes a community. Because there's another thing that we were talking about with Floody the other day. The amount of knowledge that dude has. Like, he was dropping some knowledge bombs on me, and he was like, what happens when civilization collapses? He goes, can you go at it alone? Because if you're that person that hauls up with 20 years worth of food, those two are scavengers. Those people are trying to survive and feed their families. They're going to seek you out. It doesn't matter where you're at. But it's only unless you're in strength by numbers and you have people that you trust and people that can really, get you to the next level and survive. That means everything when it comes to survival. And, more hands on deck means, more production, raising up shelters, whatever it might be. But, let's talk about like for like a basic go bag right now for like our area. What's something, that you really want to see in there other than the water and the flashlight? What's something that's crucial to you?
Well, I mean, let's just scenario we are bugging out. We're gonna be out and about, 24, 48 hours. I think shelter is extremely important. Especially if we're going on foot.
Even just having one of like the Mylar blankets,
Mm-hmm.
you can use that as shelter. It's very simple. It also keeps you warm if you're stuck in your car because EMP happens. We'll say no cars can go. You're stuck on Route 30. Mylar blanket keeps you warm. You can use it as a reflective agent to signal something. I mean, in one small package there.
And you could. The big enough ones, I think, could be used for shelter. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you can, and a lot of people will actually put some extra paracord in the bag, or even shoelaces work. But you just string it across two trees and then put the blanket down over top of it and make a makeshift tent.
I think that's one of the most common.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff too on some basic prepper sites. I'll even relate to Amazon again. They have some like basic Mylar tents that you can get for like $8. Shelter, but the thing that I really like about it, obviously it resonates with the body heat, but you have the shiny reflective parts to it too, which can also work as a signaling tool. So that's something that's commonly overlooked, but I mean, you can get some signals out there. It's not going to be stellar, but it's something better than nothing. I think another little thing that's always nice to add to a bag as well is some type of whistle. We've seen some stuff through basic search and rescue where people that have been stuck in the rubble or stuck in their car during a blizzard, they get hypothermia, things get crazy for them. they're not able to vocally shout out and say, "Hey, I'm here." You know, they could have, you know, just as well fallen down the side of a bank by a creek and snapped their leg, and they've been, you know, laying out there for 48 hours. You don't have the voice and the strength to do that, but having just a little whistle on your bag can actually help signal people. Dogs can hear it a lot better for search and rescue. So, I mean, we're talking about little things like 5 and 10 cents here that can make a world of difference if you're out there hiking or you're a regular, you know, just going out for hunting or whatever it might be.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean that's something else too. I don't think a lot of the guys that hunt here locally, I know the guys that I've ever hunted with, nobody carries any type of first aid. It's generally a box of ammo, maybe some water, 1 or 2 waters. I mean, we've gone to some pretty sketchy places, you know, up in the mountains, you know, just putting a good drive on. It gets dark and you get turned around. I mean, I know I got turned around one time where I definitely wish I would have had a minor whistle, anything, you know, even a flare gun. Actually, a flare gun would have been awesome. Just signal flare. That would have changed the entire game.
No, you're absolutely right with that, and it does astound me at how many hunters. I mean, we're a huge hunting area, and fishing too. You know, if you're out there fly fishing and your waders get, you know, filled with the water and you get taken with the current, you know, people don't prepare for anything as much as, you know, I think that they used to. And, we'll, BS with customers here at the shop. And like you said, these hunters will just go out there with their thermos of coffee and their box of ammo and their rifle, and that's it. Well, okay, you found ways to, you know, eat, but what happens if you're stuck out there? What happens if you get lost? You have a compass. You have a way to start a fire. I mean, I have a lighter on me 99.9% of the time, but getting something just as simple as one of those magnesium rods with a striker. I've seen them at Harbor Freight, Dick's Sporting Goods. I've seen them at the gas station if you go further up north. And all that is just, you know, scraping off a little magnesium onto, you know, some basic tinder, some, you know, straw or grass or anything else you see out there, and just make a few strikes and you have a fire. You have a way to provide, you know, a signal. You have a way to cook some food, boil some water, things. And, you know, I went through the Boy Scouts. That was something that we were taught very early, to make a fire. A lot of kids these days have no know-how of that. What happens when they're stuck out in the elements? You know, it's scary to think about that, but I think having just little things like that, just, you know, go down a checklist and just figure out what's going to be the most crucial for you.
Is that something maybe the four of us, maybe include Mikey and Floody in on it, and maybe post it somewhere, I guess, you know, just a basic checklist. We'll all just kind of run down, because I mean, you've got, you know, Leo and EMT under your belt. Brienne was a junior firefighter. I've taken a few FEMA courses, and actually that'd be another good thing. I can post the links somewhere to the FEMA courses that we took. They're just online courses, quick, you know, they take 25, 30, 40 minutes, something like that, depending on you know, just skill level, but really awesome information from active shooter to natural disaster courses I've completed through that, and Homeland Security as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. You know, like I said, you know, I want to be able to do one of the reviews on YouTube for like our next go bag we're going to be putting out, and it's going to be it's more of like an Armageddon bag, because we want to just show everyone like all the things that could be possible. I mean, we're going to be ranging everywhere from, you know, basic tents to little fold-up sleeping bags, all the way to heirloom seeds, and a basic manual on how to grow them, when the seasons are, things like that. It might seem like an overkill, but it might not be at the same time. We've just been listening to a lot of people that have been coming to the store, what means a lot to them, what they're looking for in the long run. So we're trying to find this all-encompassing bag that's going to be able to, you know, be an end-all be-all at that point for our area. But I'm more than happy to post it up with a checklist, and, you know, obviously we'll have a review out there, and just some basic checklists for what do you need for 24 hours, what do you need for this and that, the other thing. And you'll see a lot of guys out there with, you know, the everyday carries and the pocket dumps. And, you know, just having a handful of things in your pocket can actually change the game quite a bit. So, you know, kudos to them for, you know, and, you know, I've people have looked at me funny when I was, you know, carrying this kind of stuff around, and like, all right, fine. Like, I'm not asking you to carry it. It's basic things for me.
Right.
I get migraines, so I have, you know, the Tylenol extra strength in there. You know, want to stay hydrated, so I have some emergency water in there. I have a ration bar in case, I get like, super hungry or dizzy from, whatever. We get a lot of bugs up here, so I have, the ointment for, bug bites or mosquitoes, and we get a lot of witch hazel and poison ivy, so we have things for that. It's just little things that, might not be popping up, and this one might not be popping up in California. Just little things that I feel safer with, and I want to make sure that my wife's safe too when we're traveling. So we both have our bags. We both know we need to do.
Trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, I think the notion of you throwing together a definite. I mean, would you consider it a bug out bag? I mean, the end all be all. I mean, I would definitely say that's like, all the preppers I've ever watched on YouTube definitely consider that like a bug out bag. I'm going, I'm not coming back. I've got stuff to survive in here, long term and short term, if you will. So I mean, is that what you're?
So yeah, I mean, like that's going to be the long term. That's like, we're not coming back home. Things have been ransacked, and we might have to relocate to the closest FEMA tent or whatever it might be for the foreseeable future. I mean, I would have thought, probably 4 or 5 years ago, we weren't going to get to that point where, these cities are being burned down and things have gotten absolutely out of control. I wouldn't have really thought about that, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind, and at least have the bare minimums. A lot of these bags that we have that are very simple. It's just first aid and to get me through, 24 hours if need be. Like you said, you carry yours back and forth between your work and your home. I do the same thing. But for a bag that has longevity to it, that's going to be able to provide for a family for, 2-3 days or whatever FEMA standards are at that time, we're going to overpack a little bit more. Because like I said, look what happened to Texas. It didn't if they only planned for 3 days, then a lot of people are starving right now. A lot of people are still without anything they need. It really depends. And the biggest thing is, this is why it's called emergency preparedness. People aren't prepared anymore. There's too many people that have come in here, and we had actually talked. We were talking to a customer about one of the go bags, and this guy came up and goes, "Holy crap, man! I have 3 kids, and we only have a first aid kit."
Oh my gosh!
I was like, "What are their ages?" Thinking like maybe they're like in high school, college. And he's like, "I have a 4-year-old, a 6, and an 8-year-old." Like, okay, well, those kids are prone to running into counters and splitting their head open. And there's one story that actually comes to mind is working at one of the places for the handicapped adults. We actually had a person that it was a hot day. We didn't have a lot of air conditioning in the building. Dude just passed out, and he hit his head. I luckily had some butterfly bandages, so that I was able to keep everything intact until he got stitches, whatever it might be. And we got him ration bars, and we got him some of the emergency water. And he was, right as rain in about an hour or so. But what happens if we didn't have any of that stuff? Like, that's like a very unnecessary, like, hey, we're going right to, rush you to the ER. This is, something that we could address in-house. Because we see that a lot, too. There's plenty EMT calls where I'd be on where they, it was just a gash, like, a kid tripped and cut his knee open with skateboarding. It's like, okay, well, now we're immediately going to the ER for a $500, $600 bill. When meanwhile, while your camera buddy's laughing at you posting his crap on YouTube, he could have had a first aid kit and got you some antiseptic and put some gauze around your knee and then get you to the doctor the next day or, at least later down the road. So,
nope, got to get it on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. Like, I feel like my friends were just videotaping stuff while I'm like falling over, like collapsing and stuff. I don't know how I deal with that, but my friends have first aid and, we'll be safe. But it's just, it's interesting to see how people aren't really prepared anymore, and people don't even think about that. For Christ's sakes, having 3 small children in your house, like, how do you not have a bandage around? How do you have hydrogen peroxide? Little things like that. It kind of took me back, but then I felt bad. I'm like, wow, like, and he felt bad. He's like, I just never thought about this. We've been lucky enough through all the years not to have me split their head open on a camera when they're play fighting with each other. It's like, well, you've lucked out, but it's only going to go so long. So why not for $20 buy yourself a first aid kit?
Right. I mean, yeah, if anybody's seen the video that we did on our ground train first aid kits, I mean, it was a great start. I mean, it's been one heck of a learning process, but I mean,
yeah,
under $20, it gets your foot in the door, and I mean, I mean, now we're really.
Yeah, guys, check out the video that we did. I mean, I actually have one of their northbound train ones on this bag right now. I have my more advanced and like trauma kit and stuff in the trunk for the range and everything when I'm out there teaching classes or just out there with friends. But for $20, you can't beat it. You have the gloves, you have the sterilization, you have aloe for burn cream. It's just, I mean, you can't put a price on life. And I shudder to think where people are like, ooh, $20, that's kind of bad. It's like, really, like, it's not worth your time to put a tourniquet in there. It's not worth time to, research and stuff. And that's where people start failing. And that's when society starts failing. And that's when these natural disasters happen. You can see the difference of people that are prepared and people that aren't. And there's no gray area. It's 100% black and white, or prepared versus not prepared. And it's a very ugly slope on that.
Yeah, it is.
So, I mean, like, not to put you on the spot or anything, but, before we had really started talking about all the go bags and everything else, I mean, shooting to the range, I mean, how many of you actually had tourniquets? How many had hemostatic dressings? How many had the means to make that happen?
See that right there? Right there's the number. 0.
Yeah.
None of my friends that went to the range with us, including myself, carried
First aid.
basic first aid. And that was it.
I had quick clap too.
But yeah, I guess you did. I mean, like that's probably the only thing was that quick clot. But I mean, Scott. I mean, we talked about that. I mean, that stuff burns, and I mean, there's like certain applications necessarily like for that.
Well, I mean, it's designed to coagulate and shut everything up, and it's from what I've been told, it's a very painful process. But I mean, it's better than nothing. I'd rather see somebody, have to get some of their, quick shot surgery removed and deal with some pain than bleed out in a matter of 20 to 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing. But it's, I've seen so many seasoned shooters out there, people that are into competition shooting, people that are into just all different walks of life, and it just astounds me. Like, nobody has any first aid, nobody has a tourniquet, and
I started carrying a tourniquet in my it's in my back left pocket now. Yeah. It's just something, I mean, I've gotten used to it. It took, having something in my back left pocket was kind of odd, but I've gotten used to it, and it's like, now I've got my tourniquet, my force multiplier, my flashlight, my carry gun, stuff like that. So, I mean, what do you think as one person, everyday carry? I mean, this does fall for plan for the worst, carrying a tourniquet. I mean, is that a crucial part to our EDC, you think?
I think it should be. And, obviously we cater a lot to the Second Amendment community. I think if you're going to use a concealed carry, you should be able to treat the wound. I think if you're carrying a knife or whatever, you should be able to treat that wound. But I think in general, I mean, there's so many things that can happen where, young children can bleed out, or anyone in general can bleed out. Or, people that are on heart medicine where it thins their blood and things like that. I mean, it's a huge thing. I mean, I think, and I'm probably way off on this because in our Bleed Blue program, but I think at one point it was like, over 70,000 people die from blood loss. That's a stupid number to have. That's a stupid problem to have when all it takes is having a $15 tourniquet or just having a wrap. I mean, we've seen it time and time again through the Boston bombing and what happened with the Capitol with the baseball game. These people, like, nobody had tourniquets, so they're using shoelaces, they're using belts, they're tearing apart clothes, and they're tying everything up. So a tourniquet's a tourniquet's a tourniquet. It's just how effective the tourniquet is and how you have to apply it. But at least have somebody to stop that bleed. So I think, to answer your question, I think it definitely should be part of an EDC, or at least have the means for something. You had also talked about active shooters. That tourniquet doubles up. If you're in an office building or a school, those doors have the hinges that hang out there at the top of the door. Wrap that tourniquet around the door. Shooters can't get in as fast. People are using their belt. So double that up, and then heaven forbid there actually is a shooting inside there. Well, obviously the damage is done. Yank that off, and now you have a tourniquet. You have a real, actual tourniquet that's either been TCCC certified or not. It's still a way to stop the bleed. It's still a way to prepare. Any day somebody can walk in and want to cause trouble with a firearm. Any day somebody can walk in and just trip over something and go through a plate of glass. And and like what Mike was saying is, prepare for everyday occurrences. You know,
Mhm.
I'll be honest, I'm clumsy. I run into stuff. So I would like to have the means to save my own, you know, be able to self-medicate and self-preserve until help would arrive.
Exactly. Or I mean, just and anyone else. To be honest with you, I mean, I think it's our duty. You know what I mean? Like, it's I don't want to say it, but the sheepdog mentality. You know.
Yep, it's all about community. And actually, you know, really scary thing too. My wife, she was actually cleaning one of the glass end tables that we had, and she just leaned her arm one wrong way, and the glass went straight through. She cut herself up to her back, around her arm, and luckily it didn't hit anything critical. But it was like, okay, I have a tourniquet, we're good. And it was like, luckily we didn't need it. But just little things like that, cleaning the house or being out there mowing, have something. You know, be prepared for that. And like you said, with the sheepdog mentality, you know, if you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for somebody else. I mean, I don't want to have to use this bag on anybody else, but it's available if somebody needs it. And I think it's
fact,
people are prepared just to carry something basic. It'd be saving a lot more lives left and right. Because let's be honest here. I mean, our response time for some of the calls we have for EMT, 3 to 4 minutes if we're lucky. That's if Knucklehead's not going to block the intersection and be texting and screw us up, or we're trying to maneuver around, or, you know, heaven forbid something else happens. But, you know, that good Samaritan that, you know, saw the accident happen. Hey, I got a go bag. Like, I can at least apply direct pressure to this. I can help you with CPR. I can do this, do that. And I mean, obviously that's asking a lot. It's going above and beyond being a regular good Samaritan citizen, but have it. You know, for if 100 bags carried one tourniquet, that's the potential to blanket out and save your life. And that's what I look at when it comes to emergency preparedness. It's not just preparing for you, it's preparing for the person next to you. And and a real quick thing before I forget, the ham radio. The other reason why I looked into the radio, obviously Floody pitched it very well to me in the first place, but I was actually having like issues with cell reception down at where we shoot. There is no towers down there. There's no reception. What if I get shot? What if somebody on the range gets shot? I have no way to call out. Having a ham radio, I'm still able to do that. You know, meanwhile, I'm looking around the range. It's an outdoor range. It's not a highly glorified one. The first aid kit looks like you could get instant tetanus if you just like decide to touch it or even look at it. More stuff for first aid. But having a ham radio in those crucial situations, or if you're out in the country or whatever, you know, happens, you still have a way to communicate. These things can reach the moon and back. I mean, it's ridiculous how effective ham radios really are, and why I think it's a good part of having a go bag, a bug out bag, you know, your everyday carry. I mean, I'm not a fan of people squawking in my ear 24/7, but obviously if I need it, I can use it. And if I need to contact Jason, you know, our family is like, hey, like we're stuck somewhere, like get to this location. We all have that ability. We're not relying upon cell phones. We're not relying upon like, holy crap, like this, everything just kicked out. I can't text my wife. You know, we have the ability to communicate. And that's, again, falls under the sheepdog mentality is, you know, we're all looking out for each other. And people just, I mean, it's almost selfish now. And I think that people really need to be able to look out for the brother and sister to the right and the left and keep moving forward.
Agreed 100%. I mean, that would solve a lot of problems.
But I dream.
Right? I know. I guess kind of in closing, to kind of go over everything and kind of close this out. I mean, what is there to take away from the entire video? You know, we've been at it for about an hour.
There's a lot to take from it. If it's anything, guys, just have a plan. Have a plan and have the means to preserve and stay alive. And it, like I said, it can be as simple as going on Amazon, filling up that cart, and clicking that one button, or just, you know, look around. I mean, there's so much knowledge out there, and you guys might not get anything out of this live feed that we're doing, but 4 videos down, you guys might find everything that you need. It's available. Use it.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the future, I definitely want to get a checklist, kind of just for us local people, definitely to just go through and see what's necessary, I guess, to preserve life and to survive.
Yeah, and we'll get that put up for like the Susquehanna 717 group that we have. I'll post on Sterner Firearms. I think it's, throughout this month, just come up with little snippets of information that we can just post right out there, what's important, what's not as important, what's absolutely crucial, and just keep going from there and just build awareness. I mean, that's what this month is designed for. So we'll keep doing this and the months are to come.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think, even if we do some short videos too, we can kind of do a playlist and feature them both on both channels to just kind of to showcase. I really want to get Jason in on this. He's really knowledgeable with a lot of this stuff too.
Yep.
So
prepare yourself for longer than the podcast then.
I know, right? I'm game, and it'd be nice to have Mikey here a little bit longer too. So maybe, if we move to a day where everybody's available, we can just kind of.
Yeah, I think if we touch base another week or so and really hone in on some of the stuff, I think it'd be great. I know that Jason has a lot of great insight for that. I'd definitely like to hear more from Mikey as well. So it'd be good just for our viewers, listeners, all these people to really get out there.
Exactly. I totally agree.
Cool. Well, that's all I got for now. So I'm going to try and put together the tech.
Right. But I guess thanks for watching. I mean, anybody who
yes, thank you.
The broadcast.
And thanks for having me, Shooter.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for joining. Until next time.
Yep, we'll see you guys.
See ya.